this very big windowsill was already sanded down with an 80 grit abrasive because it was very heavily painted. It was then tacked down and had an undercoat. So I'm now just giving it a light sand down between coats with a 240 grit abrasive. This is just a finer paper to remove any little bits and gently key the surface for the next coat. You can sand it by hand as well if you wish to, but then you will have to remove all the dust as well. So using a tack cloth, wipe in one direction all the way along, just remove any little bits left behind. And once that's done, you're ready to paint. So I would always advise painting the under of the windowsill first, simply because when it comes to rolling the tops, if you're using a water-based product and you're cutting around the tops, around the window, around the wall, it can sort of dry and form a skin, which when you roll over, it can pull the paint. So once you've painted underneath, go ahead and cut in the top, around the walls, around the windows, where you're going to start rolling. Now I would advise doing a section at a time rather than cutting in the whole windowsill. Again, for that reason of paint drying a little bit too quickly where you've cut in. It's much easier and a much nicer finish to use a short head roller. So the roller that I'm using here is a 2 Fussy Blokes smooth microfiber roller sleeve, and it leaves a beautiful finish that doesn't require any laying off. And by laying off, what that means is lightly brushing over with your brush after you've rolled. This isn't required when using these roller sleeves. So this is just the first coat of a water-based satin. Once that's dry, I'll just check it over for any little bits. Check to make sure any dust hasn't settled on the surface when it's been drying. If it has, remove that and give it another coat. So I finally managed to get a little video of how to wallpaper around like a door reveal. Once you've got your length measured and cut, get it on the wall and it'll look a little something like this. So with a very sharp blade, notice the cut that I'm doing. So from the corner, a slight arch, cut straight through, and you'll see why it's important to do this little arch. Find the corner where you're going to wrap the paper around and cut that, like so. And then push your paper around, so that little arch that you cut in the paper is now the little bit of excess that's going to stick on the wall above. This is in case there's any gaps in your next length that you put over, so you've got a little bit of an overhang. Make sure your paper is nice and tight around that corner so you haven't got any bubbles, but no corners straight, but you just do the very best that you can. Trim off the excess, the rest of the length of the paper, like so, but making sure that you're keeping this little bit, because this is going to be important. So this is how this length should look. Now, here's the next bit. So this is a non-pattern paper, so this is best I can kind of show without there being a pattern, but it's the same process. So make sure this length is straight, but you're actually sticking that paper over that little bit that you've left on where you cut that arch out. Smooth it out again around those corners. Now I had to measure this wall properly because I was running quite short on paper, so usually you'd have more of an excess to cut, but as you can see, this little piece is overlapping what's already on the wall from that previous length. Using your sharp blade again, you want to cut straight through the 2 bits of paper all the way to that corner. Like I say, usually you would have more of an excess to cut, but I had to measure the wall correctly to make sure I had enough paper. So as you can see, that excess is still behind, and because you've cut through the 2 papers, you would simply remove the paper that's behind, pull that out, and this is where this Harry Potter wizardry stuff happens. You stick that piece back in place, make sure it's nice and neat, nice and even. Make sure there's no bubbles and that it's stuck nicely to the wall. And if you've done it right, you should not be able to see that line that you've just cut. So what this is called is splicing. So you've spliced two bits together. A little bit more goes into it with the pattern paper, but it's the same process. So here it is, the dreaded wood chip. It's been quite a popular question, this one, how to remove it. It's a job my dad's working on, and luckily it had a wood chip wall, so I could demonstrate. The first thing you want is a heavy duty scraper with a sharp blade. This will make the difference. A regular, wait for it, wallpaper scraper isn't any good for this wood chip. So get yourself one of these, only a few quid. And this is a wallpaper perforator. It's not a torture device, and it doesn't belong to Christian Grey. It's a very quite frightening looking but helpful tool. You can use this over any wallpaper, and what it does, you just roll it over and it creates millions of tiny little holes when you roll it across the paper. This just helps the water soak in a lot quicker. But one of the easiest things to do with wood chip is scrape across the top with your sharp scraper, and this will reveal the wood chippings. By knocking the top off as much as you can, you'll let the water penetrate a lot quicker and a lot easier. And having a sharp blade, heavy duty scraper, it doesn't take much effort at all. So that's how it should look. Here's another little trick with the heavy duty scraper as well. Make sure the blade is flat to the wall, so it's not on an angle, because you will snap the blade. Place your other hand on the top to apply a bit of pressure, and you're slicing down kind of like in a zigzag pattern. Using this motion rather than just scraping up and down, the paper comes off a lot easier. That goes for all wallpapers. Soak it in as usual. Many people will say they use fairy liquid, they use fabric softener, and it does smell great, but fabric softeners can leave a residue on the wall. I'd always recommend using a proper wallpaper stripping solution mixed in warm water. This leaves no residue, and it breaks down the paste a lot quicker. Also, by using a sprayer, you'll use a lot less water than you would with a bucket and sponge. So after 15-20 minutes of soaking time, test the paper, see how well it's coming off. If it's still a bit stubborn, leave it for a bit longer, soak again, and then just keep testing it, see how well it comes off. So this wood chip was soaked twice, and after every soak it was allowed 20 minutes soaking time, and this is how easy it can come off, just like any other wallpaper. To be honest, if this was soaked again the third time, left another 20 minutes, I could probably peel it off with my hands. But it was just to show how easy it can come off, but always allowing the soak time. Let the solution and soak time do the hard work for you, so you don't have to. Masking your carpet. Now it's important to get it right. Now bearing in mind this is me very slowed down to demonstrate this, I could have this room done within 10 minutes. But it's about protecting the carpet fully and protecting my brush from any fibres. So you'll notice that the most important part is the couple of mil overhang of tape onto the skirting board. Make sure you've always got this, because that's what's protecting your carpet from any paint running. So it's fully protected down the back of the skirting. So gently pulling the tape towards you, not too much, just enough so the tape isn't creased, so you can tap that little bit of overhang down behind without causing any tears creases or rips. Once that's done, just smooth it out and make sure it's all nice and even. That little couple of mil is so important, so this is how it should look. You shouldn't be able to see that little extra bit of overhang anymore. Now this is what would happen if you didn't pull the tape towards you. So if you try to just bash the tape down the side, you will end up tearing the tape or causing creases. And this is how that little bit of overhang will end up looking. So that overhang is now no longer protecting the carpet. It's just creased, it's folded in on itself. This is what will cause your tape to bleed. Paint can gather there and can run. And this one caught me off guard, to be honest with you. I did inspect these rolls before I hung them, but I just didn't pick up on these little bits here. And what's happened here, it's how the roll has been stored in the warehouse before it was shipped out to my customer. The roll has obviously been stood up on its side and leaning against something or standing on something, which has caused a little bit of a dent in the paper. These bits have been bent back for so long that it's bent the paper to that shape, so the paper won't fold back to sit and stick to the wall. So I spoke to another fellow decorator and she had the same issue and she recommended using the super glue. So obviously I questioned that straight away, especially going over £100 a roll of wallpaper. But what she recommended is obviously using the Taser Pink sensitive tape. This tape can go straight over wallpaper as well. So if you're painting and you're not confident in cutting in, you can put this tape down your wallpaper to help you cut in and it won't tear your paper. So to fix these little areas, I've protected the paper either side so you can see these are the bits I want to stick down here. Putting a couple of little dots of the glue on this blade, putting the blade in behind, getting the glue behind the paper. Once that's behind, just holding back the paper to stick it down for about 10-20 seconds or so. Once that's set, take this tape off straight away and that's a repair complete.